We talked about the value of making a conscious, deliberate effort to be happy. There's some studies that are coming out now that's really focusing on our mindset. And a study is out now focusing on a new field of psychological research called self-compassion. I'm reminded of an African proverb that says, if there's no enemy within, the enemy outside can do us no harm. I'm reminded of Shakespeare, the fort, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves that we are underlings. This area looks into how nice, friendly, kind, compassionate people can be and supportive and understanding of others, but are rarely that kind and compassionate and understanding when it comes to themselves. In fact, we're really tough on ourselves, most people. And you know the type, kicking oneself for the mistakes that you've made, things that you've done wrong, or feeling that you're not good enough. Dr. Christian Neff says that self-compassion is not to be confused with self-indulgence or lower standards. He said, I found in my research that the biggest reason people aren't more self-compassionate is that they are afraid they will become self-indulgent. They believe self-criticism is what keeps them in line. Most people have gotten it wrong because our culture says being hard on oneself is the way to be. One area that self-compassion comes up is in weight loss. He said that some research suggests that most diet plans revolve around self-discipline, deprivation, and neglect, but that self-compassion is the missing ingredient. Dr. Neff says the problem is that it's hard to unlearn habits of a lifetime. People have to actively and consciously develop the habit of self-compassion. I remember years ago when I had a talk show, about 10 years ago, that was sponsored by King World. And when the show was canceled, I remember how I beat myself up. I remember how I said I had an opportunity of a lifetime, and I choked. I blew it. That toward the end, after they told me the show was canceled, toward the end, the final weeks, that's when I came into my own. That's when I really found my legs and found my strength and found my presence of mind and personality before the camera. And I was so paralyzed with the self-criticism, I didn't even attempt to try and go someplace else and try and align myself with another syndicator. I didn't even attempt to go and create other opportunities for me. I suffered a level of embarrassment and shame because I'd failed, and in my own eyes, I had choked. I fell short. I didn't deliver. I didn't make it happen. Have you ever done that? Have you ever been there? So I want to know are you hard on yourself? And if so, why? What are the things that you do that you do to stop yourself from being hard on yourself? I mean, I don't think anybody can beat me up worse than I can beat myself up. And it's something that one area, I was reading a book one night, and in this area of this book, it said that 97% of our negative self-talk goes unnoticed. And we don't even notice it. We don't even realize how we hold ourselves back, how we feel undeserving, and because it's been programmed into us, instilled into it, Lord, I'm not worthy. And we go through life with these messages and these stories in our head, and we find ourselves replicating them through this inner conversation, this inner critic. So this new breakthrough area of psychology is focused on self-compassion, having compassion for yourself, giving yourself a break. Want to hear from you. Have you ever beat yourself up? Have you been your own worst critic? I want to know how you deal with that, and what are some of the things that you've said to yourself that you held yourself back. I remember looking at becoming a motivational speaker. For years, I told myself I couldn't do it because I don't have a college education, and I still don't. I told myself I couldn't do it because I had no corporate experience. And all of those things that I pointed out about myself, I never at any time in that conversation saw the possibility of my living the life that I'm now living. Somebody else saw it, and it took them 14 years to convince me to override my own negative conversation that held me back, that, come on, man, you can have a new life. Come on, man, you can create a new existence for yourself. I had to be convinced. I had to be convinced. And you feel me up in here, up in here. Do you understand what I'm talking about? And have you done it? Have you beaten yourself up over some stuff? Or maybe you did some things today that you did some things in the past that if you had it to do over again, you would not. But yet and still, even though you're a new person, even though you've been born again to be a new creature, even though this is a different person that's listening to me right now, a new level of maturity, a new level of awareness, somehow you haven't been able to let it go. Somehow you've been punishing yourself. I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of people do drugs and alcohol, that they cannot tone down and turn down the volume on that inner critic. They allow that inner critic. That's why I think that a lot of people are fat because of their eating habits. There are a lot of people that are obese, but I think there are even more that's obese because of what's eating them. And it's that inner voice that can eat you, that can eat you alive, that can drive your life if we don't get our hands around it, if we don't get control of it, if we don't make a conscious, deliberate effort not to allow it to rule us. The number, the forte brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves, that we are underlings, that inner critic. That's why this study, this whole area of having compassion, self-compassion, self-love, self-approval, the willingness to free yourself for getting those things which are behind.